2023 is nearly upon us, and I'm sure many of us are thinking about what our goals are for the new year. Maybe some of those goals involve taking care of yourself more, or trying new things, going on adventures, or for maybe many of you watching this video, it might be to finally start working on your video game backlog that's been growing and growing and growing throughout the years, only to have grown a little bit more over the Christmas season. Definitely not speaking from personal experience here. I can certainly tell you that tackling my game backlog is one of my goals for 2023. As I've mentioned in my Switch collection video and probably throughout all of the other videos as well, I have a pretty substantial Switch backlog, and that's only Nintendo Switch. That's not counting any of my other consoles as well that also have their own little backlogs. So it's become a bit of a problem the past few years. And if you're like me, who also might have a mountain of games left unplayed, you might be thinking to yourself, what happened? How did I get here? How do I get out of it? Well, friends, that's the overarching topic of today, backlogs. Hi everybody, my name is Alex, or Quality, and welcome back to the channel. So before we actually get into how to tackle your backlog, I kind of want to talk a little bit about why backlogs happen in the first place. And I'm sure for everybody it's a little bit different. You know, I'm not a psychologist, but this is just based on what I've gathered by reading articles, watching other wonderful backlog tackling videos, and just from, you know, my own unfortunate tendencies that I have. I feel like a big reason that backlogs really start to pile up is mainly due to different types of FOMO, aka the fear of missing out. Like whenever a new game releases and you want to jump on the bandwagon right away so you don't miss any of kind of the very first people to play kind of things, and you want to see things firsthand, or similarly to that, wanting to make sure that you get a physical copy of a game. Say it's a game that you're kind of surprised got a physical copy and you're kind of worried that, oh shoot, if I don't pick this up right away, it's gonna be gone and I'm gonna miss out my chance. Or it can even be as simple as a bunch of your friends are playing this game and you don't want to be the only one not playing this game. So there are a lot of different factors that can kind of build up to why we feel the need to buy games as soon as they come out. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. If it's a game that you've been waiting your whole life for, then yeah, go pick it up. But I feel like when it's a game that we're only kind of interested in, or something that we want, but there's not a big need to play it right away, I think that's a big reason why those backlogs start piling up. I can't tell you how many JRPGs that I personally have gotten that I picked up because I know I'm gonna play them eventually, but I never get around to it, and then it keeps getting buried and buried and buried by more JRPGs, and the cycle continues, and then I'm stuck with all of these 200-hour-long games that I haven't played yet. And not only that, at some point in time, I feel like the backlog just gets so big that it almost becomes something to fear. You're like, oh, there's so much work to do there. It's like a long to-do list, right? Like, oh, I have all these chores that I need to do, but I don't want to do any. I feel like a backlog can kind of start to take on that energy the larger it gets. It just feels more and more like an impossible task that you have no hope of getting through. Well, that's absolutely wrong. You absolutely can get through your backlog, and we're going to talk about ways that you can do that, or at least ways that I personally have used in the past that have been very helpful to me, not just for video games, but for completing other things, like whether that be work or reading books or anything like that. This is a very widely applicable list. So buckle in. I've got some tips and tricks just for you. So I feel like for things like this, sometimes figuring out where to start can be the hardest part. So what I recommend doing first is assess your backlog. Go through your game collection, see what you haven't played, and then start figuring out your priorities. If you know exactly what you have in your backlog, one, you might realize you don't have nearly as much as you thought you did, or you have exactly as many games as you thought you did, but now you actually have them in your hands and you know what you need to do. I think that can really help kick in the motivation to start, as well as it's just kind of starts the organization process for moving forward. A kind of a mini tip for it: don't account for games you don't own. It almost seems like if we do account for the games that we don't own but we know we're gonna pick up, then it's like, oh, we're being super organized because we are accounting for what we don't even have. However, if you don't have a game it's not technically in your backlog yet. You haven't bought it. Keep those away from your backlog. You will deal with those when you pick them up. If it's a game that you already know you're going to play day one anyways, then there's no point in putting it on your backlog. There's just no point. So focus on what you have in front of you, and that's also going to make your list seem a lot more manageable rather than counting for the next year's full release cycle as well. Okay, so the next tip kind of also goes with the assessing your backlog, but figure out how much time each of the games you have take to complete. Also figure out how much of a game do you want to complete. Do you want to 100% it? Do you just want to get through the storyline and do all the basics? That's something that you really have to take into account for, because that's drastically going to change how long an experience is for you. Checking out howtobeat.com is a really great way to see how long certain games are. They're pretty accurate, I would say. If you're someone like me who does play and complete a lot of games on stream as well, that time might vary because you have to take into account for talking to your audience and doing all of that stuff. So that's the only time where it's not super duper accurate, but for the most part, I found it to be very, very helpful. And again, it's only a guideline. It's not a for sure you're gonna beat this game in 15 hours, but just a guideline to figure out, okay, how does this rank up in comparison to some of the other games that I have? Is it longer? Is it shorter? Where would be the best place to put this in my overarching list of games? And of course, time is unfortunately limited. Like, speaking from my own experience, I work a lot. I have a lot of flute students, I stream, I do all of these things, and I still want to maintain a social life. So I have to really pick and choose what games I'm going to play based on the amount of time that I have. And we'll talk more about giving yourself time to play games in a little bit, but just when you're making your priority list, that's something to really take into account for. Do you have the time right now to play a 200-hour longer? Or would something more akin to 15 to 20 hours be more up your alley for right now? Just things to consider. And then, of course, make sure you have a way to keep track of the games in your backlog. Because I'll be honest, just having all of your games on a shelf and being like, I'll remember that I need to play that, it doesn't always work. So whether it's a super aesthetically planned out spreadsheet or it's on the back of a McDonald's napkin, make a list. Make a list, order your list by priority, include extra information like how long does it take to beat, if you've started the game already, or if it's a brand new game, etc., etc. The other thing that I really recommend, and this is good for any kind of list, if it's a to-do list or anything like that, keep it somewhere where you can see it all the time. I find that's really helpful because one, it's a constant reminder like, oh hey, these are all the games that you have to play. It helps you get excited, it helps you feel a little bit more motivated by just kind of putting it out into the world and having it there physically. And then also with that list, make sure you're updating it. Make sure you're updating it whenever you finish a game. If there's a change to your order or anything like that, keep up with the list. And the other thing too, whenever you cross off a game that you finished, it does feel really satisfying. So more little bursts of motivation for you to keep going on the list. Another thing is when you're making your list or going through these games, make sure you switch up your genres that you're playing. Unless you are somebody who just loves back-to-back, super duper long, super duper involved JRPGs, and that's all you want to play ever, and if that is, that's awesome. I'm very envious of that. I think one big thing that affects the majority of people is just getting burnt out, and that's another reason why our backlogs stay backlogs as opposed to finished games, is we get burnt out by playing the same things over and over and over again. So if you play a JRPG one time, it's 75 hours, maybe swap over to a quick platformer or a puzzle game or just something different. You can also work on that variation in different ways other than just JRPGs too. Like, say you have a JRPG focused in a sci-fi kind of world, or a JRPG focused in a fantasy world, or it's high school life. Switch it up. You don't want to stay in space forever, I promise you. There are lots of different ways to find variety in what you're playing. Just make sure you're doing it, because I really do think that's going to help with burnout a lot. And also, maybe if you have backlogs on multiple consoles, switch up the consoles too. Don't just play everything on Switch or everything on PC. Maybe play a Switch game and then a PC game and then a Switch game and then a GameCube game or whatever. However it works out for you. I'm just saying, switch it up, because it will help I promise. So another thing you might be thinking of too is, what if I have a bunch of games that I haven't finished that are still on the backlog, as opposed to brand new games? And I think my answer to that is, I feel like that's another thing that you kind of want to vary between. If it's a game that you're starting like kind of right in the middle of or right at the end of, chances are you might find it just a better idea to restart the whole game. As painful as it may be sometimes that's just the way to go. So that way you're more into it. And I highly recommend it for things that are like something that you found really, really compelling and were really excited with the story, but you just for whatever reason couldn't get to the end of it. Or maybe it's a game that you actually didn't like a whole ton, and maybe it's just giving it a fresh start might be the way to go. However, if you're also like, well, I don't want to put in that effort, I say having variation between games that you're almost done with and brand new games can be another really good thing to think about when you're setting up your priorities on your initial list. All right, so now you've got your list all set up, you're ready to go, you have your priorities straight. Now, when do you play the games? So you have to give yourself time to play games. Obviously, life is busy. As I mentioned, I work a lot. I do a lot of stuff in my personal life, and I don't always have 24 hours to just sit and veg out with a video game. So how do we make time? I've seen a lot of people use the word schedule time for yourself. However, I don't really like to use the word schedule for this kind of a thing because, one, it's a hobby, right? It's a hobby. It's not a job. To get off topic for a second, I noticed this happened a lot to me whenever I would make schedules for streaming. And while I still kind of try to keep a loose schedule, when I was getting too into the schedule, like everything has to happen by a schedule, it made me not want to stream as much, and it made me just really burnt out on the whole concept of it. And I feel like the exact same thing can happen with playing video games. If you stay to a strict schedule where you're like, okay, from the hours of 7 to 10 p.m., I'm playing a game, and that's all I'm doing every night of the week, you're gonna burn yourself out. Remember, unless you are really doing it for a job, like making content or anything like that, in which, you know, it is a little bit different. If you're playing video games as a hobby and casually, it's okay to find other ways to make the time or not stick to a strict schedule. So I just say you have to make time for yourself. Nurture your hobbies, nurture yourself, because that's what this is all about. Video games should be fun. They shouldn't be something that you have to force yourself into playing. So make a little bit of time for yourself, whether it's a few nights a week, a few hours, one night a week, whatever. See when you can take some time for yourself to play some games. And it might change every single week. It might change every single week, and that's okay. Life is unpredictable. Just chill out with a game. Make time for yourself, because that is the one thing. If you don't make time for yourself, then you're never gonna finish this backlog. Be understanding with yourself and forgive yourself if you can't stick to a strict every single day kind of schedule. So another small sounding but kind of important tip is finish your games. Which might seem obvious, but I know, myself included, there have been a lot of people that you get to the end of a game and you just can't bring yourself to finish it. Partly maybe because you don't want it to end, or, you know, life gets in the way, or you just immediately lose interest the moment you get to the end game. It happens a lot more often than you would think. But don't put it off. Finish that game. Even if you don't want to, finish it and let it go. Let it go. Because again, the moment you finish it, it's off of your backlog and you can move on to the next thing. If you're this close, there's no reason that you should like just kind of quit at that point in time. Finish the game. It's gonna be okay, and you're gonna feel miles better just finishing it then and there than putting it off a few months and still having it be a member of your backlog and feeling like you can't move on because you didn't finish that game. So finish your games. And again, that could look different for everybody. If you're going to 100% completion, do that. If you're going to complete the main story, do that. Whatever makes you feel like you have gotten the ending that you want out of this game. And so for my last tip, it's kind of controversial and maybe goes a little bit against the idea of completing a backlog to begin with, but I think it's really, really important to remember. If you are not having fun with a game, you have no obligation to finish it. And I mean that. I really, really, really mean that. And I always say, give a game a fair chance before you throw it to the side. But if you have given a game hours of your time and you can't make it through it, you're like, I really just don't like this. Or if it's not the game you're feeling right now, like you're like, I maybe could like this under different circumstances, but I really don't like this right now. It's okay to take a break from it and move to something else. on your backlog. It might sound a bit silly coming after the last tip, but I think these are two very different scenarios. Like if you're super close to the end of the game, you might as well finish it. If you've gotten halfway in and you are hating your life, stop hating your life and go play something else. And again, who knows, maybe you're just burnt out on that genre or that game series or whatever, and you need something else in your life right then and there. I really think that's okay. I really do. Because here's the thing, if you're not enjoying it, chances are you're not going to finish it anyways. Again, unless you're a game reviewer or video games are your job in some kind of format, nobody is forcing you to play these games unless you really just enjoy inflicting pain upon yourself. But yeah, really, it's okay to play something else for a little bit and come back to it, or just give up. I think we all pretty much have a good sense of when a game just isn't going to work out for us. And that's not saying it's a bad game. Sometimes a game is just bad, but sometimes a game is just not for us. Which is one reason that before you buy a game, I recommend trying to do a little bit of research before. I'm somebody who really likes to go and just kind of no expectations. I want to experience it for the first time myself. However, not everybody is like that. So perhaps before buying any game for your, any game to add to your collection, really look into it and see if it's something that you want and want to play. So I think those are kind of my biggest tips that I have for completing your backlog. But so what am I, quality individual, going to do about my backlog? Well, I'll tell you. So how I have my backlog list kind of organized is it's currently in a spreadsheet where it's all organized by priority of the game and then color-coded of, have I started this game yet? How far through this game am I? Did I start it and not finish it? Things like that, as well as the console it's on and how long each game is. I'm not gonna go through the whole backlog because that would take a long time, and again, you can glean a lot of that information based on my Switch collection video, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. However, I'm going to give you my top 3 games on my backlog. As of right now, these are the 3 games that I want to finish first out of everything else. So probably to the surprise of no one, the game that's on my backlog list first, it is the highest priority, is Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I know a lot of you in the comments were saying that I shouldn't play 3 until I actually finish 2. However, I just can't wait anymore. So we're playing Xenoblade 3 first. I feel like it's a good variation from Octopath, which I'm currently on my way to finish. Hopefully. I know it's been like a month since I first mentioned it on the channel, and longer if you hang out in my streams. Still not done yet. Soon. I'll be soon. But I feel like Xenoblade 3 is a good contrast to Octopath. Despite them both being JRPGs, Octopath is all turn-based, pixel art style, very fantasy-esque world, where Xenoblade, it's very different. It's an open world JRPG. There's a lot going on, much more technologically advanced environments and storylines, so I feel like this is a really good little piece of variation. It's also a long game, so I want to get to it ASAP. So my goal after Xenoblade 3 is we're gonna do Lunatea's Veil, the second Klonoa game. I mentioned before that I have not played the second game in the Fantasy Reverie collection, so I feel like after Xenoblade 3, which is a big game, big long RPG, I feel like just having a nice, pretty short platformer would be a really nice way to kind of switch it up a little bit, because I really don't want to go from one big RPG to another big RPG. So I feel like having Klonoa kind of in there to balance everything out and just kind of be a nice JRPG intermission would be a really good way to go about that. Plus, as I said, the game is not that long, at least not in comparison to Xenoblade 3 and the next game I'm going to show you. So just a nice little break in between, something I can just play in between work or something like that. And then third on the list is one that a lot of people in the comments have been saying I have to get to super soon, and that's Final Fantasy X. I have had this game soundtrack stuck in my head for the past few days, so I'm kind of going on my, with my gut on this one, because I know I need to play it. So many people have said so many good things about it, so I feel like the time is coming, but I don't want to do it immediately after Xenoblade, because even though I think the two games are different enough, they're still both long games. So again, having that nice Klonoa break in between, I think will make me help enjoy Final Fantasy X even better. So those are my top 3. However, that doesn't include the games that I'm playing on stream. Another way that I'm kind of not only keeping myself accountable but making sure that I'm finishing some games is I'm saving some of the games in my backlog specifically to play on stream. The first one I'm doing, which by the time this video is out, I don't think I'll have started on the channel yet, is Legend of Mana. I've really been looking forward to that game, and I think technically if I were to rank it on the same backlog list as my personal backlog list, as opposed to my stream game list, it would probably be a little bit higher than Final Fantasy X and Klonoa, probably, only because I've been wanting to play it for so long. So I'm saving some of those games for stream. So I do have 2 separate backlog lists going on. And so now that we're kind of nearing the end of the video, here's a little bonus tip too that I literally thought of right now. Maybe find ways to keep yourself accountable for your list. Maybe you and a friend are working through your backlog together and you want to pick similarly length games or play the same games together but separate, you know. Find ways to keep yourself accountable. Something that I was thinking of, which you can let me know down in the comments, is I kind of want to do maybe some mini reviews or backlog reviews as I kind of go through my backlog and work through some of these games. I'm not saying like big overarching reviews unless that's really like the vibe, but maybe just videos where I check in, show you all what I've been playing, give you my thoughts on certain games, that kind of stuff. One, because it'll keep me accountable because it's, you know, helping me create content, and also, you know, I'm promising you that I'll give you my opinions on these games. But I also think it could be really fun. That's another reason why I like to stream some of my backlog games on Twitch, because one, it's a nice way to kind of share those brand new experiences with other people real time. So let me know if that'd be something you would be interested in. I feel like it could be kind of cool. But I think that'll do it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope some of these tips were really, really helpful. This was really honestly super fun to kind of research and watch other people's videos and do some other like research on backlogs and why they happen and stuff like that. If you want more backlog tips, I recommend 2 people's backlog videos. They're so good. FemTrooper has a really, really good backlog video that I watched a little bit ago, which was a big inspiration and also kind of helping me get a move on mine. And then Super Derek RPG also has 2 really good backlog ones. You'll probably notice a little bit of crossover in between some of the ideas, mainly because they're good ideas. They're really, really good ideas. So if you want more ideas on how to tackle your backlogs, I'll leave the links to those videos in the description below, so go check them out, show them some love. They're both really, really lovely, and I really enjoy their content, so there's that. And as always, if you're looking to find more of me on the internet, I do stream on Twitch. Now that we're kind of at the end of the year, getting into the new year, I'm hoping I'll be able to stream a little bit more than I have in the month of December. December's been a little dodgy with the holidays, so I haven't gotten to stream as much this past month as I have wanted to, but now that we're entering the new year, I will have more time. So come over and hang out with us over there as well. It's a fun time. And I think that'll do it for this video. If you like what you see here on the channel, maybe consider subscribing. And also if you like this video and found it helpful, maybe give it a thumbs up. And also comment down below some of your backlog tips as well, or maybe some games that are on your backlog that you just can't wait or you're dreading to get to. Either which one works. But that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye!